Hi, I'm Lawrence Sher, cinematographer for Joker, Folie, Deux.
Believe Arthur Fleck to be some kind of martyr. Well, he's not.
This is my 7th film in 15 years with Todd, so we have enough history that our conversations mostly are about what the movie doesn't want to be. With this being a follow-up and taking place a year or two after the first Joker, we knew we wanted to continue some consistent things. We wanted to shoot on the same camera, which is the Alexa 65, large format. We loved that experience on the first one. It has almost a three-dimensionality to the way it photographs because the depth of field of that large format, similar to 15 perf IMAX, which you could see with Oppenheimer, provides like a portraiture feeling to the close-ups. The way the background down the hallway really goes soft, and you feel like the characters are the one focal plane in whatever shot you are, even if we're in a wider lens. And so that is what we love so much about this format. The biggest thing we did different on this film is we shot specifically for IMAX with the intention of changing aspect ratios for IMAX screens. As far as lensing, we used a lot of the same lenses we used on Joker, spherical lenses. Our hero lenses are a Frankenstein of manufacturers. It is not one set. I'd say the 5 or 6 hero lenses we had on the movie were a 35 Zeiss Compact Prime, a 58 Nikkor T13, really close focus. That's a real hero lens of ours. The 80 DNA, the 90 Macro Leica, the 150 Autoblad, and the 100, the 80, the 150, great lenses. And then we have a 280, the lipstick shot in the trailer and in the movie. That's a 280 Leica R. And then there's a vintage 765 Airy Rental signature series 350 mil that also plays very much in that visitation scene, the same one with the lipstick. That's also a hero lens of ours. Fundamentally, there's a huge difference, which is one, it's a romantic movie with a big lead in Lady Gaga. The love part of the story was fundamentally different. And of course, music. It is a musical. The themes and a lot of the inherent DNA of the movie continues what the first movie started. It's really a character study of now 2 human beings with a shared madness as they find and meet each other, and his struggle still with his shadow self.
Hey Fleck, you got a joke for us today?
When we find Arthur for the beginning of the film in Arkham, now in jail, as he progresses through those early scenes, it comes from a place of reality. We built sets very specifically to allow us to shoot 360 degrees. Environmental lighting was a huge part of our plan. The color palette and the lighting is driven by windows and fluorescence and where we place those fluorescents. With some fantasies and some of the music that plays into the film, it allows us to open up our color palette and explore much more dynamic lighting, interactive lighting, a lot more lights coming on to reveal things in scenes, and of course expanding the color palette to a lot more primaries and stronger colors, reds and blues and greens, and more exciting camera work for those scenes as well. So much of when I think about the arc of a character from a camera standpoint, often I'll start with color. We come to meet Arthur coming out of his jail cell, very much in the tone of the movie, which is all the world's a stage. We are performers. There's a very performative aspect to Arthur's mind and what Arthur wants to be. It's the same thing that happens in the first movie with him becoming Joker. He wants to be a stand-up comic. He's a clown. He's meant to be on stage. And Arthur doesn't even speak for the first 7 or 8 minutes. But the first interaction he has with another person is when they move to another ward to go have an interview. And at the end of the hallway, there's a beacon of warm light. So Lee's introduction of the film is warmth. It's love. It's somebody in Arthur's life that isn't cold And so that warmth at the end of the hallway, in a blue hallway, is the beacon. And she steps out into the hallway in that sort of warm sidelight, puts this to her head and smiles, and that's their first connection. Now she's brought sunlight into his life. And even saying it out loud makes it sound more overt than it is, right? It's like we try to ride the line of using these as opportunities to make decisions about color and lighting and guide us, but we hope that they're subconscious to the audience.
Let's get out of here.
So the scene we're looking at today, Arthur has just fired his defense attorney, and he's decided he's going to become his own lawyer, which is probably not a good idea. We sort of crash into them to meet them together. So knowing what we were coming off of, which was a Steadicam that followed her through the hallways, we now see her and we meet with the camera with like a nice sort of energy push.
Hey, no touching.
Which is really like the excitement of one, him firing his defense attorney and taking control of his own defense, which is what she wants him to do, as well as an opportunity for them to actually touch each other for the first time in many, many days. So in that wide master that pushes in on them to meet them, there's a B camera that's down the line of those bars that's preset to just push in at the end of the scene when they kiss. But when they don't kiss and it becomes blowing smoke, we're already prepared for that same thing. And so that was definitely part of the plan. Once we saw one take, we knew, okay, that will be part of this 2-camera setup. It's a very simple scene, but speaks really well to the sort of environmental and sort of bigger philosophy of how we make these movies, which is these two overs that end with like a really strange pseudo kiss because the guard keeps telling them not to touch each other, in which Arthur blows smoke in her mouth. People have asked, is that CG? No, that's 100% real. So however many takes we did, he blew that smoke in her mouth every single time. Even there, we did something slightly unconventional, which is I cross-shot them, which means both those close-ups are shot at the same time, which, generally speaking, for a cinematographer, is something you're forced into, versus, in this case, it was something I offered up. And usually that manifests itself in compromising one side or both, because in order to shoot both sides at the same time, you now have to light both sides at the same time, which can be quite difficult. So we put little sort of clear story windows along one side, and they were small enough that I knew that it would allow light to feed in towards Arthur and be a nice backlight for Lee. And then we added some little fluorescence down the center of the hallway as well as over his cell that would be a motivating source for her close-up. She represents the love in the movie, and she represents warmth. Her side of coverage has that fluorescent, which even though it's not beautiful and tungsten and clean, it's still our ugly Joker fluorescent. It's warm. And his side is a little cooler because he's always struggling between the shadow side of himself. He's making a decision to embrace the shadow side, which is the side that Lee Quinzel loves, the Joker side of him, but it's always a struggle for him of which side is the real Arthur Fleck.
Hallelujah, come on, get happy. Ready for the judgment day.
So everything is designed around what can I do so that when the actors show up, they have as much freedom as Todd wants them to have. It doesn't mean everyone's just going crazy. It's like we still design and think about each one of these shots, and we try to be precise. But for the actors, I don't want them to be thinking about marks. We never rehearse. We never put marks down. We have some sense of where they're going to stand. But if they want to change it in the next take, usually that's totally fine. And maybe I'll take 3 minutes to move one thing. But my hope is that they never leave set to go back to their trailers. They're always there, and the optimization is when we are shooting and we are going, and it's the actor's time and it's Todd's time. And so that manifests itself sometimes, and we did this a lot in this film, was fluidly shooting these scenes that would start sometimes quite wide, work their way all the way into close-ups. Take one, we don't know what we're going to do. Todd yells action, the actors start. We control both cameras with some headsets that we talk very quietly to each other, so I can see A camera, I can operate B camera, and it's jazz is the best way to express it. It's truly filmmaking like jazz. We've got all these musicians, I've got dolly grips and crane operators and focus pullers. I've got a dimmer board operator and a chief lighting technician who are moving lights in real time on a board. And everyone, when action is called, is now working in real time, live. And we're discovering the shots and we're discovering the scene and watching it for the first time all together.
I got the sneaking suspicion that we're not giving the people what they want.
It's okay, baby. Let's give the people what they want.
Everything we do with color in the film is done long before we get to post. We start talking about the film the minute I get the script. And we do an extensive amount of testing. And so on the first film, we created a very specific LUT. We continued that LUT here, and we made a tiny tweak, which would be just the Folie LUT, and it's a little adjustment to that, make it a little different than the first, and allow for some of that expanded color palette. And one thing I learned super early on is directors, editors, everybody involved in the film, what they're cutting to is what the movie's gonna be. And rarely will I find a director that's willing to throw it out and start over on color. So you gotta get it right when you shoot it, you gotta get it right in the dailies, and then that way what they're getting used to is basically the movie that we will see.
You can do anything you want. You're Joker.
When I look at that scene, yeah, I actually feel really good about it, and I like both their close-ups. We do a tiny little bit of camera movement through the bar on the shot that's facing Lee, and it's subtle enough that it's just the world is shifting a little. You'll see the bar make an adjustment, but partly that's also a practical decision. Both cameras need to have a little bit of an opportunity to sort of float because we don't give them marks. I don't want Joaquin or Stephanie to be thinking about, well, am I being hidden by a bar? So if we just move slightly, if suddenly one of their eyes or their mouth or something bad gets in the way of one of the bars, which is really hard when you're shooting between a jail cell, it gives us that little bit of an opportunity to adjust. But yeah, I really love her close-up in this, and I like the sort of sense of window light that's on him. And they both seem alive and happy. And for Arthur, he spends so much of the early part of the movie in a state of just in a really hard place that there's joy, there's a sense of hope in that scene and a hope for the future of the movie.